Hello, I'm your host of The Extraordinary Marriage, and I am so excited today as we talk with three young moms about being a mom. We're celebrating Mother's Day this week. But the thing is, we need to celebrate Mother's Day all the time because guess what? Your mom gave you life. So I've got three young ladies today. Being a mom is not the easiest job in the world. It's 24/7. You never realize what you're getting into whenever you become a mom, but it's the most, it pays off more than anything else in life. It's the most important job you'll do. You are preparing your children for life. And like I said, it's not easy. We all do it differently. And some moms are raising their kids on their own. Some moms are a foster mom and they're raising kids. Some moms are pregnant, getting ready to have kids. And some of us are married with children. There's also blended families. Man, there's all different kind of things that offer challenges in motherhood. But today, we want to make you feel special. We want to equip you with some of the things that we've learned as moms, and we share things that our moms did with us. So, I want to introduce you to, I'm going to go with my top left, which is my daughter, Melissa. Melissa, tell us a little bit about you.
I'm Alyssa, and new name is Burke now. I am a mother of four. I have two bonus kids. I have a blended family, and who are teenagers. And I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I also teach piano and voice, and enjoy doing Mary Kay and Scout and Cellar on the side.
Woo! You like a few things. And I happen to know you do scouts and stuff at church. And yeah, she's busy. All right. And Tiffany.
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for having me here, Connie. I'm happy to join the rest of these beautiful women. All right, so my name is Tiffany Wiggs. I am a repeat guest on this podcast. We had such a great time the first round,
We
figured why
did.
not go again? All right, so I am a certified fitness and nutrition coach. I have 7 kids. So I'm in the trenches with kids aged all the way from 8 months all the way up to 16 years old. My oldest guy just got his driver's license yesterday. He is now 6 foot, 160 pounds. And it's a delicate balance right now trying to figure out how to parent a man child, right? Like he's not a little boy, but he's not yet a grown man, but he is somewhere in the middle where he can drive, he can have a job, he's got his own money, but he still needs to practice restraint. So that's who I am. I've been married for 18 years to an amazing guy named Adam. He is absolutely the love of my life, and I knew that from quite literally the second I looked at him. I knew that he was my husband. He took a little bit of convincing, but nonetheless, here we are 18 years later, and I still have stars in my eyes for him.
And if you want to know more about Tiffany, she's in episode 26. So you can go back and watch that. All right. So Brittany. Brittany is a friend of Melissa's from church, and I know she's excited to share today. Tell us how long you've been married and a little bit about you and your kids.
Yeah, so I'm Brittany. I have been married to my husband Matthew for 8 years. We have two daughters that are 6 and 4, and another daughter on the way due this summer. So
Oh.
um, we're really excited about that and growing our family. But recently, I've also taken a job as the kids ministry director at our church, Woolsey Baptist Church, and so I feel like I have lots of kids around me constantly at home and at work. So yes, that's a little about me.
I love that, Brittany. Well, I have learned because, like I said, I'm Melissa's mom. So here I am with three young women raising their kids, but I already finished all that, married off my kids, have grandkids. And the thing is you continue to learn as you go. And what I have found that since I don't have children 24/7 like you do, I have more patience. I always hear people say, "Hey, you have your kids whenever you're young because that's when you have energy." But the truth is when you have kids, you don't have any energy. You're like exhausted and tired. So, my kids are all big, watch my grandkids sometimes, and so I have energy and I have found I have a love for kids. And that's a lot of the reason that I do what I do. I found in 2004, I started to learn about the communication styles and how people communicate differently. And often there's so much irritation and frustration in marriages because people don't understand each other. And also, this goes in understanding our kids and what they need from us. And so I've been married for 44 years. My name is Connie Durham, and I'm the host. And you know what? I have reminisced and realized how very much that my mom has meant to me because I realized she taught me everything, all my values, how to have character, how to treat people, how to do. And moms have a really big, big job. But today we're going to start out with, girls, we're going to start out with what it felt like when we brought that little tiny baby home, that first little tiny baby in our arms. And we're not really prepared. It's we have that baby and we're thinking, gosh, I hope I could take care of it. Can I sleep when it's sleeping? Like, is it okay? When my kids were little, they told you to lay your babies on the tummy because it would, it could like spit up if it was on its back. And now they tell you to lay your babies on its back. So, we're told all different things, and it's really a scary thing when you bring that first baby home. But you know what? We figure it out, don't we? So, well, just gonna keep the round of Melissa, Tiffany, Brittany, and I hope that's okay. Now you know when you're coming. So, Melissa, what did it feel like when you brought home that first little baby? What were you thinking?
Well, first, let me tell everybody that I had been married almost 15 years. I forgot to say that earlier. But I think because I have a blended family, I got practice before I brought my own child home because Preston and Madison were so small when we got married. And so I think that really helped me in the long run. But when I brought Matthew home for the first time, I think it was like I was really scared. I didn't really, I mean, I sort of knew what I was doing, but I was like, hey, this is not like a child I'm going to send back to their moms. This is like my forever child. It's always going to be here. So I don't know. I was sort of scared, but I was also super excited because I always wanted my own child. It's very different when you have stepkids. You love your stepkids. When you have your own child, it's a completely different feeling, I guess you could say. So probably scared, excitement, a little of all those emotions. Yeah.
I like that. And there's stepmoms out there, blended families out there, and that's a whole nother can of worms, isn't it? It's not easy. It's not easy because kids are being raised in two different households and that kind of thing. All right, so Tiffany, what did you feel like? Can you remember back since you have one driving now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember it like it was yesterday. And speaking of what doctors say to do and what not to do, I've probably been countercultural in every single thing I've ever done.
You and me both.
You tell me the sky is blue, I'll probably work real hard to prove that it's purple. So when we had our first little guy, he also decided he was going to buck every system that was put in place for first-time moms, right? First-time moms are supposed to go late, especially if they're with puny little white boys, and that is a medical joke in the nursing community is that puny white boys is that they take longer to gestate because their lungs need more time to develop. So you
I've
will
not heard
typically
that.
go. Okay, well, if you're not a nurse, then it probably wouldn't make sense. But all my nursing people out there, I know they're giggling a little bit at the puny white boy syndrome. So typically, we expect little white boys to stay in utero longer because their lungs need time to develop. Well, my Nolan was like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do? Great, I'll do the opposite. So he came almost 3 weeks early, which happened to be on our wedding anniversary, on our
Oh,
second wedding anniversary. So that morning I went into labor, I got up and I had done, bouts of prodromal labor multiple times. And I got up and attempted to sit down to pee, and that wasn't happening because that pressure was intense. So I got up and like waddle, waddle, waddle back to the bed. And I'm like, I think it's time. And Adam's like, time for what? I was like, yo, belly. So yeah, we got to the hospital, and within an hour and a half to 2 hours, I pushed that little boy out. And as soon as he came out, I said, oh my God, we just had a baby. And it was like, what did I expect was going to come out? Puppies? But nonetheless, I'm like holding this little guy and I'm like, oh my gosh, everything is going to be different. Everything is like, it's all him. Everything is about him. And like a love I could never have even come close to imagining. Like I knew I was wacko bonkers over my husband, but to hold his little boy in my arms was astounding. And I have had that incredible deep connection and love with every single kid. When we brought him home, I was like, I can't put him down anywhere. So all of my babies, including the current one, our seventh baby, our fourth little guy, I sleep with them. We bed share, and he has a breast and his mommy right next to him, basically 24/7. Like he's upstairs. I don't know if you can hear that, but he is squawking right now because he's not next to mama. And that's how we've chosen to raise ours. So I actually wasn't scared at all because I knew as long as he had me close and I had him close, I would have put an arrow in anything that attempted to hurt him. And I knew he was going to be safe because I loved him more than I could possibly even entertain the word and more than I had ever been loved. I knew no matter what, nothing was going to come to harm so long as he was close to me.
Oh, that is so precious. So precious. All right, so Brittany, how did it go for you?
Mhm. I don't think I was quite prepared for the sleeplessness that came right after my first. I remember it being a pretty traumatic and difficult birth. And my mom was not there at the hospital. And honestly, that was my first thought when my daughter was born. I was excited to see her, but I was kind of like, where's my mom? I need my mom now. And so I was very grateful for her and her help in the weeks after birth. I lived away from all family, and so they had traveled to stay with us. And I just remember that time being really sweet, growing as a family of three. Um, but also, it was a bit of a shock when my mom went home 2 weeks later. And then I was left like, wait, now I have to do all of this. Like, I have to clean my home. I have to make all the meals. Now I have to care for a new life as well. Um, and so maybe that was my biggest shock, I think, after having my own or having my first, is just how tired you are. And it doesn't matter if it's the middle of the night or the middle of um, the workday or whatever it looks like. You are now caring for another person. And so I think it really just gave me eyes to see what my mom had done for me, and made me a little more grateful
And
for
it's
that.
kind of like I said at the beginning, it's like our moms, no matter what, no matter if your mom gave you up for adoption, your mom gave you life. And this day and time, moms have the ability to do that. They can choose whether they want to give their baby life or not, right? So our moms give us life. And I have to tell you, through being the age I am now, it's like I've learned to appreciate my mom more. And I think sometimes with our moms, we get frustrated with how they do things or decisions they make or habits. Sometimes we're opposite of our moms and we communicate differently. But I really started to realize all that my mom had given me. And I also realized this, that not everyone gets a good mom, because anybody can be a mom and all moms are not equal. All moms don't love the same. And I think the better we have our head on, the better we can do as a mom. But really and truly, what we take forward is what we've learned. And typically, we take forward what we've learned from our moms. And then we also take the things that we're like, I'm not going to do that, right? I think everybody probably has like, I'm not going to do that when I have children. And a lot of times then we do find ourselves doing just that, even though we think that we won't do it. So, all right. So bringing our baby home. So what is your best memory with your mom, your own mom, that something y'all did special together, something that she taught you, something that you learned from your mom? I'm sorry. And this is awkward, isn't it, Melissa? Because here's your mom right here. All right. So she won't say anything bad, I know. So anyway,
No.
what's your best memory?
Um, Man, I have to go first. Probably dancing, like taking dance lessons and when I was done taking lessons, like I would go and sit in your classes and I would get to see the big girls dancing. That was such a great memory for me because I love dancing and I look forward to my own daughter dancing one day. But yeah, that was probably like my most favorite memory.
That's funny, ballet classes. In fact, my younger son had told me because, we all juggle our kids when we're working, and I worked in the evenings, like from 3:30 to 9 o'clock in the evenings. And so my husband and I juggled the kids in order to sometimes not get a babysitter. So even my youngest son sat and watched he remembers tap class, but I'm mostly ballet, but I taught a little bit of beginner tap and he remembers that. And so he would try to mimic that. But yeah, so whenever you share things with your mom, different things in common, that always makes a difference, I think, when you have things in common. Hey, and that goes the same thing with marriage. Finding something in common, right?
Mm-hmm.
Finding stuff in common that you enjoy. All right, I'm going to shake it up. Brittany, what's your favorite memory?
I really enjoyed reading with my mom. I feel like she taught me to have a love for reading, and me and my siblings, just enjoyed to sit down with her and read a story or hear her read. And that's something that I've kind of taken into my own parenting. That's one of my greatest joys with my own kids is reading. And so I am grateful that my mom kind of gave me that gift of just learning to read, but also just to enjoy that connection point with my kids.
And if you're listening here, you realize that it wasn't Disney World that we have memories about. It wasn't Disney World. It wasn't uh the new car dad bought. I mean, it's just like we get so stuck on tangible things these days. And look, the memories were that's something that was special, that you did together and spending time with our kids. So that makes a difference. All right, Tiffany.
Hey, okay, so I am a little bit different over here, is that I did not have a solid attachment with my mother. My moment of realization for what my mother must have gone through in terms of raising us kids, to give you a very quick background, my mom had three kids, three and under, by the time she was 19. And granted, she was married to, who I know is my father. However, he was an army troop. He was deployed a lot. She was so, so, so young. And she had barely even grown herself, let alone trying to, manage the emotional capacity of children alongside of that. And I have a twin sister. So she had one kiddo and then, 2 years later had two at the same time. I had spent a great portion of my young adult life being incredibly angry with my
Mm.
parents, and with my mother more specifically, because I thought, how in the world could you not have loved me the way I should have been loved? And when I became a mother, I thought, can I do that? Can I not do that? Can I be everything this little guy deserves? And, at that time, I had no idea I would go on to have six more amazing souls, live and thrive and exit my body. And then I would nourish, not just physically, but emotionally as well. I wondered, am I capable of what they deserve? Because, early on, I knew I deserved better, but at the time, I didn't know God, so there was no father in heaven that loved me. My
Mm.
parents didn't really love me.
Mm.
My sisters were angry at me all the time because, like I said, if you said go left, I was going right. And I think that sort of wayward direction was, me just trying to find myself. And then I got caught up into a lot of bad things, trying to figure out, well, where do I fit in? Who will love me? If they don't love me, who will? And it took a lot of effort on my part to and I remember it like it was yesterday. I was driving and it just hit me like God put it on my heart and said, you have to forgive her. Okay, she was 19 with three kids under three. You're 28 with three kids, three and under. You have a husband, you have a good income, you have a great marriage, you have a solid friend group, you now have me. You have so many more resources to pull from when you feel depleted that she didn't have. Forgive her. And I was
Mm.
like, oh my gosh, you're right. So although I forgive everything I didn't have, and I don't have a great memory to share, I wish I did, but I've been racking my brain. I've been like, can I bring anything to the table? And I'm like, I really just don't have anything. I mean, everything was a struggle. And there was no tender moments. She didn't read to us. I wasn't part of any clubs. I couldn't do any sports. They didn't have any money to spend on us other than the bare necessities. Every piece of clothing I got was from a thrift store. As soon as I was capable of working at 14, that's when I had to buy my own things. And I had to contribute money to the household so that they didn't get their house taken away because they were in so
Mm,
much gambling debt. So
mm.
I don't have a positive memory, but I do have the positive outcome, which is God has said, you are capable of more. You have my love behind you. Go forth and change everything for the little babies I'm going to bless you with. And that's what I did.
Well, you know what, Tiffany, the thing is that there's somebody listening today who just heard your story and they're like, oh my gosh, that's me. And that is the reality that life is not always perfect and moms are not always perfect. In fact, we're never perfect, right? We're never perfect. We're always working to be the best that we can be. And what I want to say for you, Tiffany, is that I appreciate your being honest and sharing that because it's your truth, and you're also an example that we can overcome. We can overcome, and we have to forgive because I read this one time and I say it over and over. When we don't forgive people, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It they don't die, but boy, you sure do like blacken your life. It's like your life is tough because you can't forgive. And it's so hard. I can't even imagine. And you're an overcomer. That's why I just love you since our first podcast that we did on the for episode 26, because you are an overcomer and a great example for people. Let me share a little something on my mom, as I think again, it's just that little something. Well, back in the day, Barbies, me and my sister played Barbie. She was 3 years younger than me. And we played Barbies together, and they didn't make that many clothes. And, like we weren't poor, but I mean, we weren't rich, and like we didn't have money to buy Barbie clothes. And so my mom was really not a seamstress, but she would take pieces of fabric, a little piece of fabric, and she had this lady who would make clothes for my sister and I. We would match. I had my own twin, Tiffany. And so she would make these clothes and then my Barbies. And so I kind of learned to do that too, to cut fabric and to make clothes. But mother made me a few different things for my Barbies. And then she would let me have the scraps. And so I would just cut out the little dresses, and I would take a bead and I would sew that on as a button. And I would make a little hole in the fabric so my little clothes would button. And so I remember that. And in fact, the other day I was cleaning out some things and I found a quilt, a tiny, small little quilt that for the dolls that my mom had taken pieces of fabric and sewn together by hand. And I still have that quilt that she had made. And she did offer me so many opportunities and made sure I had opportunities. But I remember her, making those clothes. So it's the little things that we do as moms that make that difference. All right, girls. So next, who likes to laugh a lot? Y'all raise your hand. We're on YouTube too. Woohoo! I like to laugh. In fact, I have found that often whenever there's crazy, weird stuff going on, um, I just laugh instead. I mean, yeah, kids make me mad sometimes, but a lot of times we just laugh because it's comical, the silliness that goes on. Sorry, Melissa, I'm going to pick on you. So, like when I'm babysitting my granddaughter, who is 4, and she's so adorable and so sweet, unless she's not rested or she's hungry or whatever. And the way she acts out whenever she's not feeling great is she goes into a bit of a fit. And I'm sure she's about to grow out of that. But she's so cute. But whenever she's doing that, you're like, really? But as moms, we're like, oh, I don't need this right now, right? Oh, but as a nana, remember I said I have more patience because I don't have kids 24/7. So, moms, don't be so hard on yourself because when you do have kids 24/7, but there's a lot of things that make me laugh. All right. So, Brittany, I'm going to start with you this time. What makes you laugh?
With my kids or just in general?
Just in general or with your kids? Yeah. Like, what makes you laugh? What's funny in life?
Oh goodness, I really like the things that kids say. So I work as a preschool teacher, as well as with the preschoolers and children at church. And I just think that the things that kids say are so funny. And they don't even mean to many of the times. And so I think that yeah, I just laugh at the things that my kids say and the kids that I interact with on a daily basis. I think that I said that I'm expecting, and I am sure you guys all know that with your not your first child, with each successive child, I feel like you pop more quickly,
Yeah.
or sooner. You grow a bigger tummy much sooner than expected. And I'm about 6 months along, and so not to the end yet. And
I saw
just
you
this,
yesterday, Brittany. I saw you yesterday when I was picking up Melissa's little one, and you just have a little baby bump. I mean, like, we feel like we're so big when we're pregnant, but she just had this night. I'm like, oh, I think she's expecting she has a little baby bump. It didn't look like 6 months.
well, thank you. That is kind, because last week one of the kids said, Miss Brittany, it looks like you're gonna have a baby. And I said, yeah, I am gonna have a baby. And she was like, no, I mean, it looks like you're gonna have the baby today. And so I said, oh no. And so she did not mean to be funny. And really, I could have been sad by that comment. I think my pregnancy hormones, but I chose to laugh. And yes, so anyway, kids say the funniest things, and I think that's something that I find myself laughing at often.
Perspective. See, perspective. If we could just see things from a children's perspective, right?
Yes.
And they're so fresh and they haven't seen many things, and we find joy even through kids experiences, I think. All right, Tiffany, what makes you laugh?
Okay, in general, I love to laugh at cat videos because I am like the closet crazy cat lady. They're hysterical to me. And oftentimes when I'm done with work and if the kids and I are just hanging out, I'll queue up Instagram and we'll watch videos about squirrels and different animals just doing funny things. One of the funniest things about my kids in general is, yes, the things that they will say, but not just like an execution of their pattern of observation. Okay, so I'll tell you a quick story because this one still gets me in knots about it. So we're driving down the road, and my kiddo is old enough to read, but still has must have been 8 or 9 years old at the time, but still kind of a vague understanding of life, obviously. And he's staring over at the cars passing by, and he says, "Oh, Mom." And I said, "Yes." He's like, "I cannot believe that's what they named this car." And I said, "What they named the car? Are you looking at a custom license plate, or is there some, vulgar decal in the back window? Like, what are you talking about?" He said, "That one." I said, "Which one?" He said, "That one right there. It's named after the parts of a lady." And I said, "What?" I looked over and it was a Volvo. He had read it as a vulva. So I said, "Oh, no, no, no. That's a Volvo, not a vulva." And he was like, "Oh." I said, "Totally different things, my man. Totally different things." But that's how he had read it, and he knew physiology because, hi, Mom's a nurse, and we teach proper body parts, and that's what he thought was the car had been named after lady parts. He thought that really is just not okay. So yes, their connection between things that they have learned into the outside world, and sometimes it gets a little skewed, and that makes me laugh for sure.
That definitely would have been funny. And Tiffany, you had your nurse's hat on for sure, because like I would be like, what was that? Don't tell me no. I'll be like, what was
Yeah.
that? Yeah, because things that we don't use any of those words usually. And of course, I'm old fashioned. And I think that whenever my boys got grown up, I started like they like push the limits just to pick on me a lot of times. That's all I'll say on that. But a second ago, whenever I had to get up, these are the things, crazy things that happen. I started hearing this noise in my den, and it was this beat, do, 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 do. It's like this beat, and it was kind of loud. And I'm like, okay, now I'm really distracted. I can't even look at Tiffany and figure out what's going on. What is that? I thought one of my grandkids had left something on. Sometimes the toy will start playing out loud. So I thought, what is that? So I can't say her name, but it starts with an A. Started playing. It started playing this music out loud. So I don't know if I said something that sounded like that name here. You just, yeah, Alexa. I can't say it loud. And anyway, it started playing. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go turn that off because I'm not going to be able to focus at all the rest of the time if this weird music is playing in there. Okay, this is real life. Melissa, you didn't get a turn, did you? Have you thought about what makes you laugh besides your mom?
Yeah. Okay, so definitely my kids make me laugh the most lately just because they're at that age where they just see the funniest things. So I'll tell my funny story. So Sarah's trying on bathing suits and she probably can hear me, but and she said, "Oh, I can't wear this one." And I was like, "What's wrong?" And she said, "My hips are showing." And I'm like, "No, no, your hips, well, your bathing suit's going to show your hips, but your hips are not showing." She said, "No, my hips are showing." And I'm like, "Where are your hips, Sarah?" And she said, "Oh, my hips are showing." So she called these her hips. And so I was like, I don't think I'm going to actually teach her the actual word for those yet because she's 4 and she might use it inappropriately. But yeah, so we had to explain, oh, those aren't your hips. That's your chest. That's your chest. So that was like our funny this past week. We were trying on bathing suits and stuff. But another funny thing that I like to laugh at is those dad videos where the dad saves the kid at the last minute. Those like the funniest videos. I'll watch them with my kids. They're really funny.
Nice.
Well, the thing with kids is when they say weird things or they say, well, I know all about sex or I know all about whatever it is. You're like, instead of giving any information, you say, well, what is it that you know? Because most of the time they don't know what they think they know. And so, I mean, that's in a lot of different things. All right. So we're doing so great. Oh my gosh, our time. But I want to talk. Okay. So whenever I asked about laugh, we're going to spell out the word love. And so laugh, L was for laugh. The next one is optimistic, O for optimism. Because I really believe when we raise our children with love, that means we discipline with love. We make decisions with love. We say no only on things that have to be, that we have to say no on, right? We do things with love. Everything works better, right? All right. So we did L, that was laugh. So 4 is optimism. Tell me something that you are optimistic about. I know it's off the wall. And who wants to go first?
Yeah,
Which one
I'm
is it?
good. I'll
All right,
go.
Tiffany,
All
go.
right. So, optimism. I am incredibly optimistic about how our kids are being raised by Adam and I because we are so laser focused on what we don't want for them. It was easy to be made clear what it is that we do. So, whenever the kids make an error or a mistake, which is constant when you have 7 of them, it's never like life ending for them. We just say, okay, well, how could we have done that better? How can you improve on what you've done? And I actually do say no, even when I could say yes, because oftentimes I want them to practice delayed gratification. So if they say, can I watch a show? And I'll be like, no. And if they lose their marbles, then I'm like, okay, turns out we need a little bit more training in grace and acceptance of my leadership in the home. So we'll say, all right, well, that reaction bought you a 6-hour delay in what you wanted. And here's why. So you have to be taught how to accept no gracefully and then be able to say, okay. And we've taught our kids that you're welcome to have a follow-up question. Okay, if now's not a good time, Mom, when would be? So even the little ones are starting to say, well, when would be a good time for that? I'm like, oh, well, thank you for asking. Actually, when I'm making lunch would be a perfect time for a show. And then they say, okay, and they toddle about their day. But this has all come with our optimism conversation that you will get what you want eventually, but it may not happen right now. So I'm incredibly optimistic about how we're executing raising them and teaching them really hard lessons, but not being hard on them.
I love that. I love that. And teaching them to ask questions. And I know something I said to my kids, this is not about being optimistic, but something I said to my kids whenever they were little was, oh, great. Am I going to forget by all my chatting? Okay. My next thought was one of the important things as far as optimism is focusing on what you want more of. Oh, I know what the other thing was, saying it nice. Optimism is focusing on what you want more of, because so often, whether it's our kids, or our teenagers, or maybe even our spouses, we start to get focused in on the stuff that's going wrong and the things we don't want, and we want to focus in on what we want to see more of. Give positive, optimistic attention to what you want to see more of, and you will see more of that. So the thing I told my kids whenever they were little was, if they said something with an attitude or a bad, tone in their voice, I would say, is there a better way that you could say that? Can you try that again? And so, yeah, I did that too. So if somebody spoke to me with a bad tone of voice, then you get nothing. And so they had to learn to change their tone if they wanted to get what they wanted. And I will say, and I'm not bragging, I'm really just thankful, thankful, thankful that none of my kids talked back. Everybody was pretty easy, I think, because we were pretty easy in our house. And we talk to each other good. We talk to each other good, so they talk to each other good. The kids, much more is caught than taught, right? Right. So, all right. Who else has got their optimistic thing in their head?
I'll share.
Great.
I think that one of the things that gives me optimism or gives me hope is the gospel of
Mm,
Jesus. And so I think that that is key in my kids' life too, to see that we have hope because of Christ and what he's done for us. Um, my grandparents are not doing very well in health. And so my kids have seen that. And something that is just really eye-opening to me is their response to that. So they have hope, they have optimism about heaven and what is to come. And so it's really neat to see that even my 4-year-old, talks about the future in such an optimistic way. Like, well, when grandma gets to heaven, she'll be able to see again, or she'll be able to remember. And so that's, I think, most important in our home in terms of optimism
I
is
love
just,
that, Brittany. And it's taking and remembering to look at what's best in everything, isn't it? Um, and I think whenever we share Jesus with our kids and we read our Bible, then we also learn how to have character and how to give good character to our kids by acting that out, like I said, in our own home. I love that. All right, Melissa, you got something?
Um, Sometimes it's hard for me to be optimistic, to be
Oh,
honest. Yeah, it's just
you
life.
are an optimistic person. I know you will.
Well, I think for being a mom, I think positive reinforcement for my kids is really important. I think that uplifting our kids and having them be successful and what's the word I'm trying to think of? Being not necessarily proud of themselves, but having courage to speak up when it's important and
Mm,
like teaching them those specific life skills. And I think being optimistic and encouraging your children is very important. I think that sometimes as parents, we put too much pressure on them, especially at
mhm,
schools these days. It's insane to expect them to be so up here. And
mhm,
yes, that's important, but at the same time, encouraging that if they're not a straight A student and they're an AB student, that's okay. That just might be where they're at. If they're putting forth their best effort and you're encouraging that and they're turning their work in and doing well on tests, I think that's good enough. Like, I think sometimes we set our expectations too high for kids, especially in elementary and middle school, and then the poor high schoolers. Yeah, yeah. So definitely positive reinforcement. We use that a lot in my house.
and
So
realizing that people are all different. We all have talents in different areas. We're all good at some things and terrible at others. that it is important to not expect our kids to be just like us, because they are not. And that's what makes the world go around, is that there's all kinds of people with different talents, different things that they do. And the main thing is character and those kind of expectations of how we treat other people, not grades and not that kind of thing, just encouraging us to always do our best. I really believe that. So I love that. All right, so girls, what one word or so do you consider when I say what makes a mom virtuous? Who wants to go first?
Quick to admit when they're wrong.
Quick to admit when they're wrong. I love that. Isn't it irritating when somebody won't admit it, whether it's a kid or a husband or whoever, right? Yeah, admitting. I love that. I love that. I do that. I do that. Anyway, go ahead. Who else? Virtuous when you think about a mom.
Okay, I mean, along the same lines as what Brittany said, humility is huge in our house. So the kids know that I am not perfect. And I think I'm unique in this respect in that I have my kids with me all the time because they're homeschooled. So it's not so much, well, yeah, I guess it is that I do make more mistakes simply by default because they're with me longer. So I have more opportunities to make mistakes with them than a mother perhaps who has their kid in school, from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. Just by the simple, the value of them not being there, you have less opportunities to screw up in front of them. But me, oh my gosh, I am like, carved wide open for them. So I make mistakes all the time, and I have to be humble and say, you know what? I'm only a person here, and I am not God. I make errors, and I am sorry. I yelled at you. I shouldn't have. I mean, just the other day, I was so frustrated. We have our house on the market. We have another home that we just closed on, and I had yelled at my 7-year-old. And I said, just get out of my face. And it was immediately, God was like, whoosh, what the hell you doing to her? And she ran out the door, got on her little bicycle and started riding down the road. And I was like, I am a jerk. And I started crying. I got in the car. I drove after her.
Aw.
And I stopped her on her bike. Woo! I stopped her on her bike and I got her off and I held her and hugged her. And I said, I am so sorry. I am such a jerk right now. The stress got to me. You never, ever deserve that, ever. From a
Aw.
mother or anybody else. You never deserve to be yelled at like that. I don't want you to go away. In fact, I need to hug you harder and more than I ever have right now. And I am so sorry. And I asked her, will you please forgive me? And she held my face and she said, yes, I forgive you. I said, I am so, so sorry. And you know what? I have been darn sure to check myself before I open my mouth to my kids since. Because it's true. She never deserved that. Little Tiffany never deserved that either. But then
Mm-hmm.
the pain and the trauma of my past comes back, and that's how it comes out. And then immediately I say, no, no, this is not how this is going down. And to ask your child for forgiveness on your knees, basically begging them to hold your heart in the palm of their hands, and be tender with it is incredibly humbling. But I will, and I did, and I will continue to do that to make life better for them so they don't repeat the same trauma that I had going forward. And I'll be darned if their trauma was caused by me. So I am incredibly aware of that level of humility I must exhibit to them to give them a better chance moving forward than I had.
I love that, Tiffany, because there's probably somebody listening and they needed to hear that because it hadn't even occurred to them. Yeah, I love that. Okay. Melissa, did you give yours?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say humble, but I think Tiffany definitely covered that whole
She sure
whole word.
did.
Yeah. So probably leading by example. I think a lot of times as parents, we expect our kids to act some ways or act a certain way, and then we don't act that way ourselves. And I actually catch myself getting upset with my kids and speaking to them in not a nice tone. And then they speak to me in that same tone. And I'm like,
Mm.
whoa, whoa, you want to try that again? And I'm like, wait, I just sounded exactly like that to them. So how am I supposed to expect them to talk to me nicely if I can't talk to them nicely? So that's actually something I'm personally working on, but definitely leading by example is a big one.
I love that. Everybody's was great. All right. So whenever I look at the word love, we do lead by example. Love, laughter is important with your kids. Lighten up, right? Oh, optimistic. How can you look at things in an optimistic, good, and loving and kind way? How would you like to be treated? The next one, virtuous. The girls just talked about that. Virtue, is leading by example. And our last one is educate. And I want to say that truly, truly, we lead by example. And if anybody had parents that were really challenging, you had stuff, don't stuff it in a bag and sit on it. Do like Tiffany was saying, it's like you have to become aware of these things so that you don't pass them on. But the truth is that moms educate their kids. They educate them in kindness. They educate them in how to look at life. They educate them in um, being a go-getter or keeping your commitments. I mean, there are so many things that moms do, but the thing is, it all starts with the heart. And like Melissa said, we want to act a certain way so that our kids act a certain way. But truly, it starts with our heart, forgiving others, thinking well of others, loving God, loving others, and being humble and paying attention to what we do wrong and letting our kids know, I'm so sorry. Because then they learn how to say, I'm so sorry. And if no one ever says, I'm so sorry, they don't learn how to say it. And honestly, certain personalities have a really hard time with that. You know who you are. And other people, they say they're sorry way too much sometimes. But educate. So, what is the one thing that you want to educate your kids in? I know I've been drilling you, hadn't you? We're just about done. So, who's thought of something? Something you want to educate your kids in that you haven't said anything yet. It could be anything.
I'll
Okay,
go
well,
first. Oh, go ahead,
oh, sorry.
Tiffany.
All right,
First time that happened.
this is an easy one for me because my kids are homeschooled. A lot of people think that the objective of homeschool is to create the smartest kid in the room, and for us, that is not our main objective. We're graduating our 16-year-old this year because academically he knows what he needs to know. So why would I just use the rest of high school as a placeholder when he is ready to get out there and live his life? He is ready to figure out what he was made for. Like, my objective in educating my kids, not just academically, but socially, emotionally, to be mature, responsible, functional adults that have a profound amount of compassion for the people around them. They
Mm.
know how to raise a family. They know how to interact with the world around them. And my number one objective was always to teach them how to find resources to solve problems. So if I could put a phrase that is probably spoken most often in my home, it is solve some problems. Let's
Mm-hmm.
figure that out. Well, I don't know how to solve it. Well, then can you find resources?
There you
Find
go.
resources. So, in the, general school capacity, some people will say, well, cheating is looking up things to find the
Mm-mm.
answer. I'm like, no, it's called resource management. Everywhere we look, we have resources to come up with answers. So, that's my biggest objective in education with our kids, is to teach them to be functional, stable, capable, loving, and virtuous humans out in this world so that they can go forth and create stability within our human experience here on planet Earth.
Absolutely. That's my mission. And that's what I've realized is so needed in families today. Melissa,
Well, along with everything Tiffany
I
said,
was
I
going to
think
say, did
also
she cover it
you
all?
really covered it all. So I think teaching our kids to put themselves in other people's shoes. So
Mm,
like there's been a kid in Matthew's class that doesn't have as much money, and like he's noticed like they dress a little different. And I said, but you love them for where they're at. That's really important to teach our kids because we don't all have the same background. We don't all have the same home life. Some make more money than others. And so teaching our kids to put themselves in other people's shoes it helps them teach them to look at the other side along with their side. And it sort of helps them stay in the middle and not so biased to like what their opinion is. So that's one thing that I've been working on with my kids.
I like that. All right, Brittany.
I was going to say something very similar to Melissa, but I just want to teach my kids to look outward, to serve others before serving themselves. I think that um, all these other things kind of fall into line if we have that right perspective. So just teaching them to love God, love others, and yes, look outward.
All right, so Brittany, I'm going to take yours and I take off from that because, some people just naturally think about others. My husband's one of those. They naturally think about others. And then others of us, I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but, you know, I thought about me first. I took care of my kids and I took care of everything. And I don't mean I put myself before my kids, but we always think about what I want to do. And our kids aren't any different than that. And so a big difference for me at this age, let me grab a drink of water, has been learning to get past myself. I sing, I danced when I was a kid. I'm in choir at church, I'm in a lot of different things. And I always hated being in front of people. And I finally learned to get over myself because that's why I had so much trouble and move past that and to pay attention to others. And through learning the communication styles, I have learned to love other people where they're at and to understand why they act the way they do. And sometimes it's other stuff that we bring into marriage that makes us act certain ways. But I've learned so much from that. So I do like private coaching and I do group communication style classes online and in person. And I have found that this has opened my eyes to the world and how we are each so very different. And we all bring something different to the table in our personality styles and from our past. And so each mom is different. Each mom is special. You're doing the job. You're doing it the way that you can do it. You're doing the way you know to do it. But it's kind of like you heard today here is to be open-minded and listen, but I'll also say to think on your own because the world is so loud today and there's so many different ways of doing things. Don't feel guilty. Don't allow guilt to take over and just, ride hard on you every single day. Let go of guilt and just reach out, be open, educate, learn all that you can, and figure out what you want to be and just focus on that. Focus on that positive instead of focusing on all the things you think that you're not. Because as women, we tend to focus on what we think we're not. So, in honor of Mother's Day coming up uh, this weekend, I want you to honor your mom. I want you to honor yourself. And I want you to give yourself, I tell the kids this a lot of times. You can't see me if you're on the podcast, but YouTube, you can. Take your hand, give yourself a pat on the back because you're doing the best that you can. I'm Connie Durham with the Extraordinary Marriage Podcast, and I hope that you'll join me next week. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.